decidua basalis. And what used to be the chorion, used to be the trophoblast cells, are now chorion. Exchange of nutrients occurs in this region here. You take the decidua, add the chorion to it, that's your placenta. That's where exchange occurs. This that was the body stalk is now called the umbilical stalk. And we have developed blood vessels to bring nutrients into this, the developing embryo. And the amnion is getting larger and larger as the embryo gets larger. Eventually, this amnion fuses over here with the chorion. They call it an amniochorionic sac. Eventually. That's in more in the second try, I believe.
Rachel, pull these off.
But for now, it's separate on its own. Here, down here is the cervix. Here's the fornix of the vagina. And it's protecting it, the cervix, keeping it closed, the external os and the internal os. Here's a thick muscular layer, the myometrium.
Thank you.
And that we already did. Okay, before I give you my chart, just if we look at what the book has, and that's why I took those pictures, because I don't think the book really shows very much. Although this one I do, this isn't bad actually. The book does show that over here is the egg. It has a corona radiata with a zona pellucidum. The sperm meets it here in the ampulla, fertilizes it, so that we start to have, by day 2, they start dividing. By day 3, it's already 32 cells as a solid ball. That's a morula. By day 4, it has hundreds of cells, and it hollows out in the center, creating a cyst. We call that a blastula or a blastocyst. The cells on the outside are trophoblastic. The cells on the inside make up the inner cell mass. The trophoblastic cells that cover the inner cell mass are the cells that are going to burrow into the wall here. So they secrete enzymes that will dissolve the wall. This is the functional endometrium that they're dissolving into. This is the one where I think they jump pretty fast. But they show you it burrowing into the wall. By the 7th day, they almost have it completely in the wall. This is that syncytiotrophoblast, where they're proliferating. And eventually, within it's not even 2 weeks yet, you start having these villi. They're called chorion trophoblastic villi, but now we have some extraembryonic mesoderm. Extraembryonic means it's not part of the embryo. The 2 extraembryonic membranes are the amnion and the yolk sac, or extraembryonic. This in the middle is embryonic. So after day 10, when we reach our 2nd week, this is now 14 days. After 14 days, this is 16 days. We now have 3 layers. This is a gastrula. We no longer have an epiblast, it's called ectoderm. We don't have a hypoblast, it's called endoderm. And in the middle is the mesoderm. At this point, we have a gastrula. From here to here, gastrulation took place. Some of this mesoderm migrated in between, and we have a gastrula. This is where exchange takes place. This is lacunae. Blood and glandular tissue from the mother mixes in here with what was trophoblastic cells, but now they have mesoderm, so we call them chorion. And we can get exchange through here. And eventually that exchanged nutrients will go back through a blood vessel through the umbilical cord. It starts as an allantois, becomes a body stalk, and then becomes the umbilical cord. And so in the end it looks like this. Here's the umbilical cord. It receives most of its blood from the decidua basalis, not so much from the capsularis. The yolk sac got pretty small, the amniotic sac got large. So when I summarized it for you, what I left you with is this chart, because I found that I had to kind of keep my timing together too. So let me make this bigger. Oh, that's smaller.
Is that online?
This is online. So these are terms that you would have to know. Cleavage, implantation, gastrulation. That's the first most important one. Day 0 is when fertilization takes place and you form a zygote. This is physiologically speaking. Otherwise, day 0 from a gynecological standpoint is your last period. But for us, day 0, the zygote was formed. Within a few days, day 3, it's a morula, 32 cells. Then day 4, it reaches the uterus. Day 4 or 5, it's called a blastula. A blastula has an inner cell mass with an epiblast and a hypoblast, and a blastula has a trophoblast. That's going to become extra-embryonic membranes. Inner cell mass will become the embryo itself. These are the stem cells that they do research on. After the first week, somewhere just before the second week or by the second week, we start to get a gastrula to form. That means that the epiblast becomes an ectoderm, the hypoblast becomes an endoderm, and mesoderm gets in between there. The ectoderm becomes the central nervous system, the epidermis. The endoderm becomes the GI tract, respiratory mucosa, urogenital mucosa, everything lining the inside of your body. Everything in between the two is the connective tissue, the muscles, etc., some epithelial cells from glands. So this will form the whole embryo. And it's complete by the third week. Gastrulation is now complete. And the cells start to specialize. Whatever they're going to become, they become. So from the 4th week through to the 9th week, organogenesis forms. That means the organs are forming. By the time you reach your 9th week, all the organs are in place. They're not functioning per se, but you have 5 fingers, you have eyes, nose, you're starting to have all the spleen, the lungs, all those organs, their formations are there. You now are called a fetus. This is week 9. During week 9, you're a fetus. So when the first try ends, you have a fetus, and all the organs are in place. By the second trimester, the fetus grows faster than the placenta and the organs specialize. Placenta. By the end of the first try, the placenta is complete. That's probably why it's safer. Once you make the first try, there's less likely that you're going to have some sort of abortion. It's like the scary part is before that first trimester. Past the first 3 months, all the organs are in place and your placenta is in place, so you know you're going to get pretty good nutrition to the baby. The chorion has converted itself, and the trophoblast has converted itself into a chorion, and the decidua and the functional endometrium underneath the trophoblast has converted itself into a decidua basalis. So the chorion plus the decidua basalis forms the placenta. And because the one right underneath, decidua basalis is right underneath where the inner cell mass went in, that's where the umbilical cord forms. So that's why that becomes the most important thing. This, I know Dr. Crocker does it, says it was getting a little crazy here, he thought. He would be happy if they know everything, not the red. But the red is the extra-embryonic tissue. The amniotic cavity with mesoderm forms into an amniotic sac. It cushions the embryo and fetus and prevents adhesions. The yolk sac forms the primordial germ and blood cells. initially. It migrates into the embryo, but it starts in the yolk sac. And the allantois forms a body stalk and later the umbilical cord. So all of these things are developing as extraembryonic tissue, more or less. And the trophoblast cells, that's why the inner cell mass forms not only the embryo, but it forms these extraembryonic tissues. It's responsible for the umbilical cord, the first few germ cells and blood cells, as well as the amniotic sac. And the trophoblasts start forming villi as they implant. They get blood, they get mesoderm, and now they become the chorion. The chorion is what secretes human chorionic gonadotrophic hormone. When you pee on a stick and you get HCG, you know you're pregnant. HCG is what sustains the corpus luteum. If you don't produce HCG, the corpus luteum undergoes attrition. You're going to have progesterone halted, and that you're going to get your menstrual cycle. You're going to slough off the endometrial layer. So you need this to sustain the pregnancy, and it comes from the chorion. That's why it's called human chorionic gonadotrophic hormone. And that's the embryonic portion of the placenta. The decidua makes the maternal portion of the placenta. And eventually, the amnion winds up merging with the chorion, forming an amniochorionic membrane because it gets so large. We'll see it on the models. So during the second try, by the first try, placentation has been taking place. What happened with my daughter, too, is you say supposedly after the first round, we had some problem